Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
Yeah, hello, Nest family. Great to be with you for another episode. Daniel Garb here alongside Drew Jones. And let me tell you, Drewy, if someone went through you on a footy field like Jordan Agoe did to Elijah Hewett, I'd have your back straight away, mate. I'd be there front and centre.
Garby, I appreciate that. And I would absolutely have your back as well, because that's what we do on the Nest. We look after our own. And unfortunately, Garby, if you did try to back me up in that situation, it would be too late because I'd already be dead, because Agoe would have literally killed me and I would have gone to heaven. The guy would have got 1,000 weeks. But I appreciate you would have been there for me. How did you feel?
I say I would have been there. I would have been there, and then I would have run away quickly, hoping no one saw me remonstrate and didn't fight back.
Well, everyone just needed to be a placeholder for big, bad, bustling Bailey from Frankston to come in and make an impact. Unfortunately, we didn't see it. How did you feel when we didn't fly the flag?
I was furious. So I was at the A-League Grand Final, so I was watching a large part of the game on my phone. But I was driving to the game, the A-League Grand Final, when the Agoe incident happened and caught up on it. And I remember thinking, like, what? Like, because I already watched a highlight, I'm like, there must have been something afterwards. And I couldn't scroll back and watch the full visions. I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, it seems weird that nothing else happened afterwards, but surely it did. I've only seen a 30-second clip. And then I got home and I watched the game back, and I was furious. I messaged all my mates saying, I've got to unload here. There's been plenty to be embarrassed about from an Eagles point of view this season. That's number one. Like, come on. How does no one step in? And all the excuses like, oh, maybe they thought it was a hip and shoulder. The kid's lying on the ground, ironed out, for goodness sakes. Like, not one. And I heard Simo say that, oh, maybe there weren't enough experienced players around. There's an angle of Dom Sheed watching it, and Tim Kelly's the closest man there. And he goes to Elijah Hewett to look after him. That's fine. I thought it was so poor. So poor.
Really disappointing, isn't it? Because when we're playing this way and we're not expected to win many games, you would think all we've got to fall back on is spirit. And that's all that Simo's talked about for the last 2 years. Spirit, fight, effort. And we could have had two players go in, whacked Agoe, both got suspensions for striking. We could have given away a 50, all that. It wouldn't have mattered. It doesn't matter what happens out of that, whether we give away 2 goals or a free kick. And, we were going to probably lose the game anyway. At the time that it happened, we were pretty much getting hammered anyway. And it was a chance to stand up for, a teenager who's just been knocked out. And I don't care what people say. It's worse or just as bad as Kane Corns says from my point of view. I think that's intentional by Agoe. I don't care what he says at the tribunal. That shouldn't be graded as careless. That's intentional. And
yeah, I agree with that.
He jumped and bumped and he'd seen him handball. So to me, that was a player with an intent to physically intimidate, and he hit him in the head. So, yeah, anyway, he gets his 3 games, but it is disappointing. So Will Schofield wrote this article for Code, and I'll chat to him tonight on AFL Tonight about it. But he said he thought it was the worst thing that he'd seen from the Eagles in the last 2 years, and this is a team that's won 3 of their last, 40 games or whatever it is now. It would have felt a lot better as a supporter having seen us come in from every angle. So Schofield in his article referenced when Andrew Gaff got knocked out by Tom Jonas, which was pretty ugly and probably slightly worse, obviously, than what we saw with Hewett and Agoe. But I was watching it today and counting. I think within a few seconds there was 10 or 12 Eagles players around him, and then the rest of the team sort of started to filter through. And Schofield said that he ran from full back and still managed to put his hands around Jonas's neck and dragged him almost all the way to the advertising hoardings at the fence. A couple of boys got in there straight away. Like there's an angle where you can see Yowie. Yowie gets down on his hands and knees, and he has both hands on Jonas's scruff of his jumper and has just hit him in the head. I think 5 or 6 players got fines out of that, and Jonas gets a 6-week ban. But I remember I was at the Richmond Club Hotel, of all places, drinking beers, and I was watching that Eagles-Port Adelaide game, and I was, physically shaking. I was so mad at what happened. And the fact that the Eagles players did that, it means something. It matters. So it was disappointing.
Yeah. So the players responded on the field in terms of getting back into the game. Now, did Simo roast him a quarter time over it? He looked pretty animated, so a reasonable chance something was said. Greg Clark comes out and, gives it a bit to Degoe, so there must have been some words. And the team responded on the field, which is the most important thing. But, there was an opportunity there, and they're lucky they got back into the game, and that's great, and we play good footy to get back into the game. But there's an opportunity there to send a message that we're not pushovers, that we're not this weak team that everyone thinks we are at the moment, that we have some spirit and fight, and they didn't do that. And that's the perfect chance to get the crowd involved. Like, that's the main reason you do it, right? Like, all right, you're killing us. Well, now you've done this. All right, that's a momentum shift in our favour. Now, we did get back into it, so maybe we're being slightly hypocritical, but that doesn't always happen. And there was an opportunity there to stand up for a teammate, but also rally the West Coast faithful inside Optus and make it even tougher for Jordan Degoe than it would have been, because he admitted that it really plagued him for the rest of the game and the Collingwood team. So anyway, hopefully we never see that again. And I reckon there were some words said after the game, and it looks like we overcompensated. So there was the Instagram post, which they made far too much of, and then Dom Sheed's comments on radio afterwards where maybe he went too far because he felt like he had to. So we were chasing our tail a little bit when we could have just acted then and there on the spot.
Well, it's just the fact that we felt the need to overcompensate via social media and then a radio interview afterwards, like that, I just find that almost even worse. Yeah. Like, it had to happen on the ground. Anyway, just a yes or no answer. Could we have gone after Degoe in the next 5 minutes and done what needed to be done and still have played the way that we played and got back into the game? Could both of those things have happened?
Yeah, definitely. Of course they could.
Okay.
But for all we know, we didn't, and that allowed Simo to roast him, and that snapped him into action. We're talking stuff we complete hypotheticals that we can't answer. But look, at least we did get back into the game, and that was good to watch.
Yeah, we did play well for the second and third quarter, and we got it back to around 10 points or so, and we were belting them in contested ball and clearance. I just wonder if Simo at quarter time sort of said, you haven't really shown probably the spirit required in that moment. Can we make sure we make the ball really our objective, where our intensity and aggression goes, and perhaps that did come out on the field as well. So anyway, it was nice to see us at least take it up to the Magpies for a little while, who are clearly a great team, and we're not judging our season on wins and losses to the top team on the table. But unfortunate that sort of injuries bit us a little bit. Garby again, Barras with some hip soreness going out before the game, that left us pretty short. And then obviously losing Hewett to concussion, and Hearn with a hammy, and Connor West hurt his knee, which looks like he's going to have surgery. And then Duggan is sick in hospital and gets suspended as well. It's I would say it's comical, but I think we were using, the term expression comical weeks ago. So it's hard to know what to say about the injuries, to be honest.
Yeah, and the Duggan suspension, that probably would have been overturned. Do you think there would have been a reasonable chance of it? How there's only a 2-game gap between what he did and what Degoe did is mind-boggling. But anyway, he was ill regardless, and he misses this week. A shame, because he's playing quality footy, Liam Duggan. He has been, it's a clear top 3 our best and fairest: Duggan, Kelly, Allen. I reckon the gap, it's the size of the Nullarbor plane from those 3 to the rest, isn't it? Maybe Jaden Hunt somewhere around the mark. after that, where else would anyone else figure?
Anyone who's just played all the games would be near the
Bailey
top.
Williams has had a good month. He'd be all right. He's going nicely. Look, there were some positive signs from the week. We should touch on that before some of that injury news, and we need to speak about Nic Nat and where he's placed and Shannon Hearn after another hammy. But, there's some guys who are doing some nice things, or certainly on the weekend, and Tim Kelly had another big game. The way Oscar Allen's playing, but I see he was in Jake Niles' mid-season All-Australian team. I think he might have been, which, is a fair shout when you consider the amount of goals he's kicked in a team that's struggling so much. Bailey's going beautifully in the ruck at the moment. He's really growing into a player. And some of the youngsters are doing some nice things too and starting to gather some form and momentum and confidence. So, there was a fair few positives there. Noah Long had a really nice game as well. Yeah,
and I think Callum Jamieson definitely played his best game for West Coast. I think he might be out injured this week. I think he's hurt himself, which is really annoying because it would be nice to see him get some continuity. And really, he ended up playing just because we simply had no other choice in terms of numbers. But that was the most comfortable I thought that he'd looked at AFL level, which is really good. Nice to get some continuity into Rhett Bazzo. He's going to have like a tremendous amount of responsibility this week, whether he's on Fogarty or Walker or Thilthorpe. But again, these are all great learning opportunities for Rhett Bazzo, and hopefully, Barras and McGovern are sort of schooling him throughout the week to help get him up to speed. And certainly Luke Foley, the club's got to make a decision on someone like him, whether they see him as a player that can play a role into the future for us. He's getting valuable experience down back. So I think Brady Hoff maybe the last couple of weeks is, showing some composure with the ball and, isn't looking too bad. So, it's certainly not all doom and gloom. Dom Sheed, have you been pretty impressed with him since he's come back? And let's be honest with Sheed here. Over the journey, we actually haven't seen him play as a full-time inside midfielder, 75% set of bounce attendances. We haven't seen that consistently too often. And there's been times this season where he really has looked like he could be a damaging player for us when he's given the reps as an inside mid. So that's a pretty promising sign for Dom Sheed, because he is someone that we do, if he could play good footy for another 5 or 6 years, he actually might still be around when we go back up the ladder.
For sure. And there's the other big one from the weekend, and that's the Bull in Elliot Yeo.
Yeah.
The amazing thing about him and Shuey, for that matter, is they miss all this footy. They have so many injuries, but when they come back, the zip is still there 100%. Like, you watch him and you think, how are you able to do that when you've missed so much footy? Like, just bounce off blokes, get rid of tackles, shrug tackles where you need your groin and your hammies and those parts of your body to be so strong. And he's had so many injuries there, and he just shakes them off against a team like Collingwood. He was awesome. And if Shuey comes back this week and fingers crossed stays injury-free, then we get those two together with Sheed, with Kelly, and we've got a midfield again.
Yeah, so Yo was doing that thing that he used to do, Garby, where he looks like
the shake-off.
He's the 8-year-old in the playground, and there's a bunch of 4-year-olds trying to tackle him, and he just, swivels his hips and throws blokes off, and it's like, okay, hang on, he's actually against like the best side in the comp, and he's shrugging tackles and physically dominating people. That's like the Elliot Yeo that we know and love, and I guess you got to give credit where it's due to the West Coast medical staff and the high performance staff that they have. Instead of what they've done in previous years, brought him back, just when he's physically right to go. They've actually maybe got a little bit more work into him, so he's come back and actually looked capable of playing AFL minutes. So, yeah, it's pretty promising. I'm still always cautious about getting my hopes up too much about Yowie, because it always feels like that soft tissue is not far away. But if he could get some continuity, geez, it's going to make a massive difference. Like, we might actually be able to do what we were planning to do this weekend, which is roll Yo, Shuey and Jimby as that 3-way switch between midfielder and half-back. They trained all pre-season for that, and they haven't been able to do it once. So it'd be nice to actually see that in action and hopefully, that's a pretty good experience and learning experience for Ruben.
For sure. And he's, probably patting a little bit at the moment, but he's needed a rest and he just can't get one. And Andrew Gaff's needed a rest as well. He can't get one. And so I kind of feel for Gaffy a little bit. Like, we've smashed him a lot, and we know his form's tapered off massively after a pretty good opening month. And we've criticised him or analysed him, it's probably a better word, over the last couple of seasons. And now the wider media is starting to pan him a lot. Not surprised, 18 months behind the analysis on Gaff from where it should be. But they're all going for him now. And now I feel sorry for him because he's actually needed rests, but he just can't get one. Like, we can't afford to give him one. Same with Jinby. They've needed a week off a rotation, but we just don't have the players. So they've had to keep fronting up. Jinby's been fine, but Gaff's, he's really chugging along. And then it's getting to the stage now late in games where, he literally can't kick the ball 35 metres, which is pretty sad to see. And it cost us a goal at a crucial time in the game, and then Collingwood goes and kicks 7 in a row. And it was a momentum changer. But, we all know where he's at, and I'd be shocked if he played on after this season. But I do feel for him a bit because he should have had a break somewhere, and that might have helped him maintain a decent level of form.
Yeah, well, Garby, he has my respect for continuing to come out and, do his absolute best when he's clearly not right to go. He's not 100%. He's carrying something, and it seems like potentially he could have been carrying things for the last 18 months. And he does have a bit to answer for the level of performance over the last 40 games, as does the entirety of the team. But he's still out there. He's doing his best. He's playing a role. So he has my respect from that point of view. So you mentioned, Gaffy in terms of his future. Can we just talk about a couple of the senior players? So West Coast put out their injury report, and they mentioned in that report that Nic Nat's now, they've sort of reached a point where nothing's happening with the Achilles, so he's going to see a specialist. So is this a last throw at the stumps to get this right?
Yeah, I don't think he'll play again for West Coast. And if he does, I think it's sort of a 1 or 2 ceremonial games. I don't think he won't play. I'd be absolutely shocked if he played beyond this year. I think he'll retire at the end of the season, and I'm not sure he'll be able to get back to play a farewell game or 2. Hopefully he does. But it looks like at 33 years of age with this injury, which is one that you look at it and you think the body's just, it's taken too much, right? His size and all that, with an injury like the Achilles, the body's just clearly sending him a message that it's gone through too much and AFL football is not possible. That's the feeling I get. So I don't think he'll play again. And I think he'll retire, and that's going to be very sad if that happens. But hopefully he gets back for a couple games at the end of the season. But he's looking unlikely, isn't it?
I wonder if this is the last-ditch attempt to play a bit of footy this season. He has got a 2-year contract. So, the medical staff, the rehab staff, they might still be thinking about, how do we get him right to have a good summer and a pre-season. But, the amount of time, Garby, between right now and round 1 next season, is that 9 months? How can we possibly think that in the next 9 months, Nic Naitanui will not have some sort of other injury or setback that will allow him to be ready to go and right for round 1 next year? There's no way we could have any confidence in that. So from that perspective, is it even worth it?
I don't think it is. To keep him on the list. You would have to renegotiate the contract for next year and say, we want you there as, Bailey Williams now number 1 ruck, but we want you to play the odd game here and there and help out and still have an impact. And maybe he'd agree to do that, but he's not going to get through a full season. That would be ultra surprising. So I think he'll finish it up at the end of the season. What do you reckon? Or even before. He could announce it within the next month.
I have absolutely no insight whatsoever. I just think I don't want to write him off because he's come back from a lot. And
this is different though. Coming back from a knee and coming back from something you just can't get right are 2 different things.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is. You can't just have an an Achilles reconstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not going to come good, then how's he supposed to jump? He's a ruckman. He needs power and explosion, and without an Achilles, he can't do that. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he's playing next season. I'm not going to write him off, but I'd be surprised. I'd love to see him get a farewell game. Who knows if that's possible? Yeah. If he was an assistant coach next season, and he was on our playing list with a view that maybe he could play, 6 games.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you feel about that?
Yeah, that could work.
Is there room for that? Is there room for that in AFL footy? I don't even know.
It's tough. There's a challenge there to try and stay fit enough.
He's taking up a spot on the list of potentially a player who could be in our next premiership.
I think you'd do what they did with the Giants with Mumford, where he was an assistant coach and they needed a ruckman, and so he all of a sudden just came back. So if we got in a desperate state, then maybe you'd open up a list spot and he could slot on somewhere in the middle part of the season. But isn't Nic Naitanui, we're talking about one of the greatest Eagles ever. He's got to go out the right way. He's not Shane Mumford. We've got to celebrate Nic Nat. He's someone who, as we know, has been a massive figure of the club and a massive figure in WA. And, I don't know, you don't just linger when you're Nic Nat. You make a call and you go out amid a lot of euphoria and celebration, which is deserved. So I think it'll be a clean break, and it wouldn't surprise me if that happens in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Just quickly, does that change our ruck situation, assuming that we are, planning some sort of Godfather offer for Tim English when he's a free agent? Do we just roll into next year with Bailey Williams, young Harry and Jamison?
Good question. See, I don't think Harry will be... He might be ready for next year. I'm not sure. See, the jury's out on Jamison. He does a bit, but he's very awkward. Now, can that develop in the next 2-3 years? Maybe. We've got one there in Bailey, but I get the feeling they might need someone else. They might need some support. But then you're carrying 4 rucks on the list, and that's too many, And then you're right. If you go for a Tim English, what's the point in getting an experienced guy in on a 2-year contract when they're just going to be sidelined or moved to the side when English comes in, if that's the plan? You know what I mean? So we're in a bit of an awkward spot there, but I can see us going for an experienced option to see us through a couple of years. And there's no guarantee you'll get English anyway. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, we're putting a lot of stock into getting Tim English, which may not happen. So I could see, going for the greybeard option, the John Giles break glass in case of emergency. Is there any part of you that looks at Kieran Briggs and thinks, geez, could that be Jamison? Could he just come out of nowhere, having done his apprenticeship, and all of a sudden be ready to go? I know Briggs. Yeah, I know Briggs did show good signs. He was a dominant junior ruckman, and then he couldn't get a game and played some defence and yada yada. It's a good story. And now I look at him playing for the Giants. I'm like, geez, this guy's good. There are guys out there that, if we could nab someone like that, or if Jamison becomes that, you just never know. But there has to be a backup plan. There's got to be some left of centre thinking for sure.
Yeah, we'll find someone, I think, to get us through a couple of years, and then we'll see where we're at. But Barnett, they've invested a lot in. He was an early pick. He was the first ruckman taken in last year's draft. So it'll be Barnett and Williams, I think, before too long, unless we get English, and then you probably end up trading Bailey Williams in the future, and you've got English and Barnett, right? Let's say we do get Tim English. I reckon that's the move. Bailey Williams ends up going at some stage. We cash in on him, and we play, and it's English and Barnett as our 2 ruckmen. Yeah,
well, I mean, I guess if the Williams was the 3rd ruckman on the list, I mean, that's fine, really, however it works out. If we get English, to be honest, I'm not worried as much about the other pieces. I'm just happy we've got Big Tim. But so that's one of the veterans, Garby, in Naitanui. Shannon Hearn, disappointing with the hamstring. We really need him right now. We need about 3 Shannon Hearns. We need some toughness and, that quality lockdown medium defender, which we just don't have. How many games do you think he's got left in him?
A few. So I don't really see the point in him retiring now. Like, you've chosen to play this season. It's a hammy. If you did it again, then yeah, okay. Just say, well, that's it. But it's only a 2-3 weeker. Might as well come back and play out the season. It's pretty clear that we want to try and end the season on a high. So you've got to play, to use a golfing term, you've got to play the ball as it lies. Now, we've been in a perilous state, 3 wins in 40-odd games. So I think we've gone, we need to get some momentum at the back end of the season. We can't just meander through and keep losing. We have to try jag a couple. We've got North Melbourne at home. There are other options there. I think Richmond and St Kilda at home, like potentially winnable games if we get all the players back. We've got to give everyone around the club a lift and provide some optimism moving forward. So you try and get Hearn back. You try and get these injured players back, which is why we didn't put another one on the inactive list for another mid-season pick, although there probably wasn't a player that was attractive enough for us to do that either. And you try and jag a couple. So Hearn, the decision with Hearn, I reckon, falls into that bracket. No, try come back. Let's try win a couple of games in the way in and go out on a high note. But if you had to do it again, Drewy, well, then obviously you would make that decision then and there. So, I think Nic Nat retires. Hearn obviously goes at the end of the season. I think Andrew Gaff does as well. So that's 3 retirees, a lot of money off the salary cap, and the rebuild is in motion in a very big way. Is there anything else, anyone else you think might go at the end of the season in that sense?
Yeah, well, I personally, people talk about this massive list turnover that's going to happen at West Coast. Well, I don't subscribe to that, because we've still got some gun veterans on the list. Like, we're not trading Elliot Yeo, we're not trading Dom Sheed, we're not trading Jeremy McGovern. Like, that's not happening. But they're all good players. They're all very much ensconced in our best 18. So, in round 1 next year, it's going to be Barras and McGovern down back. There's going to be Elliot Yeo coming off half back and playing through the midfield. I think Shuey will play on. I just think he's so valuable as a leader. He's a good player when he's on the park. I don't see him retiring. I think Shuey gets another 1-year contract. So, yeah, our team round 1 next year will be competitive, barring, this injury crisis that we seem to be having every year. And there'll be good young players sprinkled through the lineup.
I think if Shuey has another bad hamstring, it could be the end. Like, it's very much last chance saloon. Like, he's had so many. If he did a 4 to 6 weeker, hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully he finishes the season like he did last year. If he does another big one, there's every chance he says, well, I've had enough of this. It's too hard.
Well, he said he did a press conference a fortnight ago and he wants to play on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if Shuey did a bad hammy, I mean, sure, like Luke's, he'll reflect on that, and I'm sure that'll come into his decision making. But I think if he's going to go, then it's his call.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough talking about these guys, Garby. Like,
yeah,
we love these guys. They're absolute legends of the footy club. So
it's just a shame the way in which it's ending. So I'm really hopeful of them coming back and fit and winning us some games. Like, I don't give a crap about Harley Reid and all that. Like, I just want to see us win some games. If we play our hearts out and win 1 or 2 and we still get the number 1 pick, well, great. But, I really want us to beat North. I really want us to beat one of Richmond and St Kilda at home. I think it's achievable. If we get Shuey back, Yo stays fit, Darling should be back soon. Who else are we looking at? McGovern, not too far away. And then, maybe Liam Ryan's back for one of those games, and the likes of Petrevsky, Seaton and others are up and going. Of course we can win a couple coming in, and the club really needs that right now. They really do. So I'm on board with what the club are thinking in that regard. And some people will say it's short-sighted. Look at the bigger picture. No, you got to judge where we've been for the last couple of years. We desperately need a couple of wins at the end of the season to give us a lift going into next year.
Yeah, when you're 3 of your last 40, you can't pick and choose. Oh, it'll be,
No.
we want the number one pick and whatever. Like we're bringing back, we're going to have a good team on the park by about round 18 or 19, and we might win a few games. Let's hope that we do, because, we've got over 40,000 people, maybe more, rocking up to watch us each week. You got to reward that. And Adam Simpson wants wins. He doesn't care about what order the draft's in. So, yeah, I've got faith that we'll get there. But it's hard yards at the moment. Duggan out, Hearn, Hewett, Barrass, West all missing this week.
I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this week. I'm worried about a Hawthorn type loss. I've got fears. I know Yo back alleviates them a bit, the way he's playing, but I'm a bit concerned. You?
Yeah, because if you look at the numbers against Hawthorn, like our midfield performed well that day. So I see us breaking even with Adelaide this week if we've got Shuey, Yo, Kelly, Sheed sort of doing the majority of the work in the centre bounces. It's just like it's Rhett Bazzo against Thilthorpe, Walker and Fogarty. And then we've got to try and negate Rochelle and Rankin. Even like little Lockie Murphy's having a good season, and Jordan Dawson's, Brownlow's smoky. So, yeah, Adelaide are doing a lot right. They're a good team. So they could run the score up for sure.
Question for you, without notice. So we've seen the captaincy rotation, and it's Barrass, Duggan and Allen. If Luke Shuey, regardless of whether he plays on or not, isn't captain next year, who has stood out the most for you? Who would you like to see be the next captain of the Eagles now that we've had a glimpse of them all in action?
Well, I've felt that Barrass would be the right man going forward, but I really have loved Oscar the last couple of weeks. Is it just too soon? That's the only question I would have for Allen.
I really like Duggan as captain.
Okay.
Now, is he high profile enough? Maybe not. I've called a bit on Tommy Barrass. I'm not sure. He's a very chilled character. Wouldn't bother me too much, but I don't know. I kind of feel like I wonder if Oscar and Liam have gone past him a little bit. And I don't mind Liam Duggan as that sort of Nick Maxwell type captain. Like, very good player, probably a better player than Nick Maxwell, but, not the superstar of the team. But I just really like the way in which he carries himself and the way in which he plays. And, yeah, he is pretty prominent across half back and stepping through the midfield. I wouldn't have any qualms at all if it was Liam Duggan. I'd be behind that.
Do you think you've seen out of those three, he has clearly had the most uptick in performance whilst as captain?
Oscar was pretty good.
Yeah.
So
he's been good all year, though.
He's been good all year. Yeah. I'd say it's pretty even between those two. And then Oscar is obviously the glamour boy, and, there's a marketing aspect that goes with that. Or Liam Duggan's a pretty good-looking guy as well, but he's not a key forward. But there's a marketing aspect with Oscar Allen that obviously is attractive to the club. But, yeah, you missed all of last year and he's still pretty young. Are you putting too much pressure on him? Maybe it's co-captains. I don't mind co-captains too much. Like Oscar Allen, Liam Duggan, Tommy Barrass as vice. I could deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the triumvirate. It's those three.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Any other pressing issues on your mind, Drewy?
No, but just to finish off, I did enjoy Will Schofield's story about Chris Judd. If you read it, he was playing his second game, Scoey, against the Kangaroos. Daniel Pratt was verbally trying to intimidate him as well as just elbowing him in the back. And Scoey said after the 20th time, Chris Judd walked over and assaulted Pratt to the ground, stood over him and said, "If you touch my teammate again, I will kill you." And had this.
I saw Chris Judd out. Go on.
Oh, I just said he had this look in his eye, which is why he's a Brownlow medalist premiership captain.
I saw Chris Judd out in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and we had a bit of a chat about the Eagles, which was nice. Not that he knows me, but I was with a mate. He was a Carlton fan. It was after the Carlton-Sydney game. I made him come up for the game, and he said, "Oh, meet me for a drink after the game." I said, "No worries." Went to a bar near the SCG, and Juddy was there, and my mate called him over, and we had a bit of a chat. And it was actually a day after the sad news about Daniel Kerr came through. So I asked him if he'd spoken to Curry, and he said, yeah, it's tough and all that. But he said he did catch up with Ben Cousins in Perth recently, and they had a good time, and he said he's doing really well. So that was nice. And more to the point, he was actually really enthused speaking about it. Like, his face was lighting up, and that was the part I liked about it, like the genuine love and care for people like Kerr and Cousins, and was happy to talk about the Eagles and was pretty keen for the chat. Like, he didn't seem like he wanted to get away. He was enjoying it. So that was nice. That was a cool moment for me, Drewy, if I might say so.
Yeah, I'm genuinely jealous. I spoke to Juddy once at an engagement party. He was lining up to go to the bathroom, and I just slid in next to him and started chatting to him. And yeah, I was only probably 17 or something, so that was a long time ago. But he was at that stage, he was tearing the competition apart. And that's my Juddy encounter. Oh, he turned me down for an interview once at Punt Road. That was post-retirement. I tried my best.
Yeah, he won't be the first player to do that to you. So
no, he wasn't the first one, he was the last.
Wasn't the famous Jamie Elliott one at Collingwood's training ground?
Yeah, he couldn't be bothered. That's what he said.
That's right. One of the great lines. We've all had that. But on another note, a bit of a contrast to Chris Judd, but I've actually done an interview with Jared Brander, which should be running on the AFL website at some stage shortly.
Oh, yeah.
Not sure exactly when.
Interesting.
Well, I actually found out that he's been playing in the Sunraysia Footy League for the Wentworth Roos, and he's kicking bags of goals. He kicked 13 a few weeks ago. He's captain of the team. He's playing key forward, and he's dominating. I thought, well, that's interesting. Like, just delisted, and he's happy to go back to amateurs in Mildura and sort of lead the way there. So I've done a bit of a story on him and how he feels about footy, and you'll read it when it comes out. But he's really happy. Like, he's just loving playing footy for fun again. And he's the kind of guy, Ben McGlynn is director of coaching there, former Hawthorn Sydney player, and he's like, this guy should be playing AFL. Like, it's silly that he's not. And so I spoke to Jared a bit about why it didn't quite work out at the Eagles, and he's pretty good about it. Like, there's no hard feelings, there's no grudges, no scars. He's like, the main thing he discusses is that he should have tried to really nail down a key forward spot rather than switch to the wing. And maybe he was happy to go along with that to get a spot. But he's like, that's the one thing I would do differently, is say, no, I'm a key forward and I'm playing key forward, and use me there. And if you don't want to pick me in the AFL there, then play me there in the waffle until I'm good enough. And that was really interesting.
Okay. Well, we look forward to it. I think we've reached sort of Bill Simmons podcast areas that we're promoting other things. That's where we're at. We've got fingers in many pies. We're on the. We're on the shot clock.
I figure Eagles fans will be interested in Brander. Yeah. No worries, Drewy. Thanks, mate.
Well, let's hope we can put up a fight against the Crows, Garby. Thanks.
Yeah, sounds good. Cheers, pal.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.